Hello, fellow humans. Have you heard about this term quiet quitting? It's been trending in social media and the news for the past few weeks. It's about doing your job and nothing more. It's about refusing the hustle culture where capitalism pressures you to work more than 40 hours a week and go above and beyond for your employer, hoping to get a raise or a promotion. It's the opposite of being a workaholic and forgetting to live. Let's see what the people are saying and what the media is not telling us. If you relate with what you see and hear in this video, hit the subscribe button below so we can also win at the YouTube algorithm, not just the wise Mr. Beast. This is what the TikToker said in a viral video.
I recently learned about this term called quiet quitting, where you're not outright quitting your job, but you're quitting the idea of going above and beyond. You're still performing your duties, but you're no longer subscribing to the hustle culture mentality that work has to be your life. The reality is it's not, and your worth as a person is not defined by your labor.
Days later, the media reacted with these articles. Only 24% of Americans thought their managers had their best interests at heart, according to a Gallup poll released in March 2022. U.S. non-farm worker productivity in the second quarter has fallen 2.5% since the same period last year, its steepest annual drop since 1948, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The decision to step away from hustle culture can cause tension between employees and company executives, and can also cause a rift between fellow colleagues who may have to pick up the slack. In 2021, Brookings wrote about the lying flat movement in China, where a culture that prioritizes overwork started to clash with a feeling of stagnation among workers, particularly among younger people. In April of that year, the concept went viral. A hardcore capitalist, among others, also had this reaction.
Quiet quitting is a really bad idea. If you're a quiet quitter, you're a loser.
Gallup's Global Workplace Report for 2022 showed that only 9% of workers in the UK were engaged or enthusiastic about their work. The Wall Street Journal writes that quiet quitting is a not-so-new idea of establishing work-life boundaries while still collecting a paycheck. Workers are pushing back on the expectation that they should go above and beyond what they are paid to do. The CBC in Canada writes that it's about clocking out at 5 p.m. on the dot, only doing your assigned daily tasks, limiting chats with colleagues, and not working overtime. Reporter Karen Ho writes that hustle culture has been repeatedly shown to be only beneficial for corporations and their managers through bonuses, through increased productivity, through increased revenue and profits and the like. The official LinkedIn Twitter account writes, without proper grammar and punctuation, they call it quiet quitting, but it's really just doing your job requirements during normal business hours. People deserve a good work-life balance, and not answering a work email at 10 p.m. isn't quitting. It's just being a normal human who has a life and sets healthy boundaries. Posters on the anti-work Reddit page, which took off during the pandemic with the motto, "Unemployment for all, not just the rich," blamed the media for frenzied coverage of a concept that should be considered the norm, not a scandalous new trend. And this is what the mainstream media does not talk about. This is the stuff that we find on popular pages on Reddit and on independent YouTube channels. It's the reasons, the explanations, the causes behind quiet quitting. More and more people realize that the way capitalism has organized the culture of work is savagely exploitative, manifestly anti-happiness, stupidly destructive of the environment, moronically obsessed with growth and profit, status and privilege, exclusion of the lower classes, and seclusion of the ruling class. The sick and tired humans, the depressed, the overworked, the losers of the rat race, the underprivileged, feel that the hustle at work under capitalism is taking a heavy toll on their health, happiness, freedom, self-esteem, and dignity of self-determination. The media does not say the word capitalism, does not talk about these deep emotions that define human identity. Greedy kings like Kevin O'Leary punch you in the metaphorical face if you do not show up at work, you lazy scumbag, for not wanting to build up his business. Oh, and you don't like the hustle culture? Fine, get lost, resign, and fake choose to work for another greedy king. This is the design of capitalism, the separation between those with power and those who work. This institution has created the aberrations we see today, from the hustle culture to the delusion that we have a free market of labor. For those who are quiet quitting and for those who think about it, know that you are right. You feel deep in your gut that there's something wrong with this institution, something that is not fair when very few humans collect the fat wages, fat profits, and you slave away from 9 to 5, from 9 to 9 sometimes on weekends, sending emails at 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. with the hope, the illusion, and many times the delusion that you will get noticed. You will please the kings, and they will reward you. Maybe they will let you get closer to their tight circle, one step closer. Maybe you will play golf with them. Maybe you will become a partner. Success at work is publicized like the lottery. 1 in 10,000, 1 in 100,000 wins the jackpot and becomes another boring title executive that has no choice but to continue the expansion of the institution of exploitation. You cannot get to the top without being a top player at the game, knowing and absorbing the rules of the game as if it was your own blood. It even helps if you are a sociopath, so you can trample faster on the dramas of your workers who think about quitting quietly. These words, quiet quitting, they do feel like a silent rebellion, don't they? Let us put into a more perspective. Most of those who are quitting, quietly or not, probably remember that the top 1% of Americans have taken $50 trillion from the bottom 90% from 1975 to today, according to a paper published by the Rand Corporation. How did this happen? Unequal income distribution. This means before 1975, incomes were distributed more fairly, more evenly, not perfectly though, but after 1975, this distribution became so lopsided into the favor of the ruling class that every single American in the bottom 90% of income lost $1,200 every month, every year since 1975. As an article in the Time magazine comments, for example, are you a typical black man earning $35,000 a year? You are being paid at least $26,000 a year less than you would have had income distributions held constant. Are you a college-educated, prime-aged, full-time worker earning $72,000 a year? Depending on the inflation index used, PCE or CPI respectively, rising inequality is costing you between $48,000 and $63,000 a year. Again, this is because we stopped taxing the rich progressively in the 1970s. We gave them more and more tax breaks, more and more loopholes to hide their wealth, and more leeway to have power over their employees. If prosperity that was gained in the past 50 years had been distributed broadly as before, how much would a typical worker earn today? If we measure inflation using the PCE, the Personal Consumption Expenditure Price Index, which is more conservative, or the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, which is more common, the results are extraordinary. Look at this table. At the median individual income of $36,000, workers are losing $21,000 a year considering PCE, or $20,000 a year considering CPI. But according to the authors of the report, these numbers understate the impact of rising inequality on low and middle income workers because much of the gains at the bottom of the distribution were largely driven by an increase in hours, not an increase in wages. This means workers have been working longer hours to maintain the same value for their income. If we consider these longer hours and patterns of workers' participation, we get this table. The median full-time worker is losing $42,000 a year. The worker should make about $100,000 a year to have the same value of income as in 1975. Half of this potential was stolen by the ruling class. Again, the article in the Time writes, According to Oren Cass, executive director of the conservative think tank American Compass, the median male worker needed 30 weeks of income in 1985 to pay for housing, healthcare, transportation, and education for his family. By 2018, that cost of thriving index had increased to 53 weeks, more weeks than in an actual year. How much do we really work? We can look at this kind of data that appears to show that we work less in absolute number of hours. This seems to be progress. We no longer work 3,000 hours per year like in the 1870s. Today we work about half of that. Yet when we put this apparent progress into perspective, we see that long working hours are increasing deaths from heart disease and stroke. So are we better or worse off than we were 50 years ago? Given the state of the world, the quiet quitting phenomenon did not reemerge without a valid reason. Even if people do not know the history, their collective sense of fairness is shouting into a bullhorn, enough is enough. Working harder makes losers and winners, many losers and very few winners, not because the distribution of wealth matches the distribution of effort or the distribution of merit. The winners win because of the privilege they had at the beginning of the game that gave them a significant head start, because they exploited the desires of consumers, and because they rigged the rules of the game in their favor. One of the big lies of capitalism is that everyone has equal opportunity at playing the game. Watch out for these words, equal opportunity. This propaganda translated sounds like this. They tell you to sit at the table like anybody else, on the same chair, in the same room of life, but they never tell you that the dice you are using are made of plastic, while the dice of the ruling class are made of gold and are rigged to help them win all the time. Do not be surprised when you work as hard as your colleague, but they get the promotion, not you, because they had insider information, they had privilege, they loved the institution more than you did. Quiet quitting may sound like an act of desperation, of revolt, even of resignation against the institution. Or it is all these combined. Some cynics mock the expression, such as this human who thinks that quiet quitting is shutting down your laptop in the middle of a Zoom call at 5 p.m. The cure to the hustle culture, the weapon that will begin to dismantle the institution, is working time reduction. We simply have to work much less inside the institution and spend more time outside of it to nurture our own life, not the life of kings. We should not have to spend more than 20 hours in the service of working to build the wealth of others. The degrowth movement makes a clear case that wage labor and the amount of time spent on it is a decisive factor shaping the economy and its ecological footprint as well as people's daily life. Reducing working time can increase people's well-being and contribute to a more equal distribution of work in society. Finally, to break the spell that is thrust upon us by the ruling class, it is very important to remember this. The ruling class was not chosen by us. We did not give them our vote so they can have power over us. The ruling class is self-chosen. Their group is contained and protected by the rules of the institution. Many of them are blind to these rules. They execute the rules as they were told to do by their parents, by their teachers, by their mentors. Some are indeed benevolent. They genuinely believe they are good people and they do good in society. Some are sociopaths. They know very well what they are doing. They enjoy capitalism. They want more of it. They have no scruples. They would fire you without blinking if they caught you quitting quietly. This is because there's no democracy at work. We cannot hire and fire our bosses and our kings. This is just how it is. This is the constitution of the institutions of capitalism. They are not natural and never were. They were invented. Like any social invention, these rules can be broken, eliminated, and replaced. This gives all quiet quitters enormous power, the knowledge that they can uproot the system, establish democracy at work, establish justice and fairness. This will be the path to the real liberation. If you relate with what you saw and heard in this video, hit the subscribe button below so we can taste the crumbs of the YouTube algorithm. I would like to thank my Patreons for helping me stay independent and ad-free. If you can support this channel, please visit my Patreon page at patreon.com/Vlad Bunea. Thank you for watching.